Welcome back, everybody. Forgive me, I don't have a script here, so I'm just going to kind of talk as I see what's going on here. We started out with cutting down these 1x6s. We're going to use these to glue up a top for the pin. Quickly move over to the jointer here. I finished jointing these boards faster than Thursday night passionate hugs with my wife. I do like this new jointer I got. It's a Grizzly G0905, but it does have some issues. The rear fence has to be taken off to convert it into planer mode, and it has horrible dust collection, but I guess that's some of the things you give up if you decide to go with a cheaper combo tool like I did here to save some space. We're going to rip down the final width of these boards. I did cut a couple extra to have a little bit of play room in case I didn't like the way one or two of them looked. It gives me a little bit of adjustability too, like if I don't like the way the pattern is, I've got a few boards to kind of play around with. Here I'm just marking all the edges so I know where to put my boards back together when I glue them up. And these are the flat panel glue up clamps that my dad made me for my birthday. They work pretty well. Essentially, as you're clamping down, it puts pressure on the front and the top and bottom edges at the same time to bring the boards together but also keep them flat. They work pretty well, but sometimes you still need a little bit of extra clamps and stuff to keep everything flat. You'll notice as we go through this video, the benches and table saw slowly start to accumulate more junk as I tend to get distracted by the project and don't clean up any of my mess as I go, which I always regret. Here I'm over borrowing my dad's drum sander. Gonna run this through and clean up all the edges. It's the only thing that we have that's wide enough to clean all that up. Essentially it'll do 16 inches per pass, so if you flip the board around, since it's open-ended, you can do a 36-inch wide panel. A little bit of boring sanding. Off camera, I cut all the pieces for the frame. Didn't figure I'd bore you with all that all over again. Here I'm using my new Grizzly dowel joiner, and it seemed like it worked very well, but right here I've figured out that it is not accurate enough to do anything useful. The bits are too far misaligned. I did go back and forth a little bit with Grizzly about that, and they ended up returning it as defective. Do be careful when buying Grizzly tools. They do make some very good tools, but they have a once it's opened, it's yours policy, so you cannot return any tools unless they can prove it's defective. So in lieu of that, I went and bought this Jessam Pro doweling jig. It's essentially just a machined aluminum piece with guide bushings for your drill bit. It works a lot better. It takes a little bit more time to put everything together, but it is much more accurate. After clamping everything together there, everything is nice and smooth. And just like that, all the other frames are put together. What I'm doing here is I'm marking out some drill locations for holes for rebar. The rebar will work as a I guess a way to see into the pen, but also allow the dog to get some fresh air. I chose to go with rebar instead of a dowel, since there was a concern about the dog chewing. So we did go with hardwood for the frame, and I chose rebar for the supports. To avoid any damage the dog could do or minimize it. Since that rebar is harder than Grandpa after taking his blue pills. There's about 3,247 holes I drilled here. Definitely drilled more holes here than a trip to your local brothel. I decided to go ahead and assemble everything up dry one more time so that I could get a measurement for the bottom and back panels that'll be made out of plywood. Those you could use the plan that I designed to cut, but I prefer to cut those after I have everything together, because inevitably I will cut something not quite perfect, and if I cut the plywood before measuring, then likely I'll have to go manage it again anyways. So and there I am getting those measurements. And writing them down because I will forget before it's time to cut them. After teasing my wife a little bit, we put the board up on the table saw to get ready to cut it, and you will watch in real time as karma strikes. Now I'm just going to measure and prep to cut the back and bottom panels. This is sanded plywood. It's actually nicer in my opinion than the veneered hardwood plywoods if you're going to be painting it. I didn't show it, but off camera, I did realize I cut each of these just a hair too short, so I had to mark and cut them one more time. And that was a result of me mismeasuring for this table saw cut here, where I cut off the extra on the side of the board. We are back to drilling some more holes. These are the dowel holes that will be used to join the sides and back together in front. I believe these are 3/8 dowels, if anybody cares. And this jig actually is pretty nice. You see here, it instead of requiring you to measure or mess with the jig in any way to get the exact points of where you need to drill your holes for the face of your joining board, you literally just use your board as a template, and it will center on the dowel that you've already put in on the other edge and give you a perfect alignment. And I realized here I'm an idiot and put it on backwards. And we got a nice clean joint. I can't say enough good things about that Jessam jig there. It works very well. And the only thing I could think of to keep from getting paint on these rebars, and actually it wasn't even my idea, it was my dad's, was to put some saran wrap on them. I had some shrink wrap for packaging. All you fellows out there, you definitely know you need to keep that rebar wrapped up, otherwise you might end up with unintentional rebar babies. So here I'm going to go ahead and glue this all up. I think if I was going to do this all again, I would probably get the electrical cord out of the camera view, but I would, on the frame, I would drill a hole all the way through, with the exception of the door, and put the rebar in or dowels after the frame was painted, because it definitely made it a little harder than it needed to be. And here I quickly get this all glued together and clamped up, and there's what we have. Start painting this, which is the worst part about the whole project. I was going to use my dad's airless sprayer for this, but I was having some issues with it getting to spray, so I ended up just using a paintbrush. I think I hate painting because I'm not good at it, and it takes a long time. I always try and find a quicker, easier way, but usually end up doing more work. And here I am staining the top. Anybody with good eyes will notice this is not the top I glued up. Off camera, I cut the top to length. I measured twice and cut it wrong anyways. So I went and bought a pre-glued up panel to save time, since I already made her wait extensively long for this to be completed. Here I'm countersinking some holes here. I used these little figure 8 tabletop clips from Rockler. They just look like a figure 8, and you screw it in from the top on the frame, and then you, as you'll see, me and the wife come in afterwards, and we will flip it over onto the top, and then you can just screw those fasteners into the top. The benefit to doing that than just like pocket holing it in would be that it does allow the wood top a little bit expansion contraction as the moisture and temperature changes in the environment. And I'm sure there's an easier way to put hinges on, but I always choose whichever way looks the easiest and is the hardest. I just used some of my business cards to space this out where I wanted it to be before I mounted the door to the frame. And again, using my trusty method to put this door latch on, which is just a simple barrel lock. Now that I've finally got all that completed, I can move on to trying to take this plastic off. It turned out to be quite a pain to take this stuff off. It sticks to itself very well, and it got from the paint. It got kind of stuck in the holes. I did do my best as the paint was drying to go spin those rebar in their holes a little bit to keep the paint from curing the plastic to the frame. And then it was about here where I realized, hey, there's a little ridge on there, and I put so many coats of paint and rust protectant on these rebar that I was able to use a razor blade and cut right down that ridge, and then they came off very quickly. And there's what we end up with, a rustic farmhouse industrial dog pen. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.